Since 1925, 95 Best Actress Awards have been bestowed by the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences. As of mid-2022, those Academy Awards have gone to a total of 78 women, as some of them have won the award more than once. The list is a who's who of Hollywood royalty and features some of the finest performances to ever grace the silver screen. And now, for a special Patreon-sponsored minisode, the Great Pop Culture Debate podcast wants to determine what is the Best Actress Oscar winner of all time. Giving Liz Taylor a run for her dashed hopes and good intentions, I'm your host, Eric Resniak. I'd like to thank the Academy for this prestigious award and welcome my panelists for this episode. It was an honor for them just to be nominated. Hey, you all right there, Carissa Kloss?
Oh, I just think I'm gonna barf. Well, that passed. Now I'm hungry again.
Oh, well, I just put my friend through the chipper shredder out there. You want some? He's always depended on the kindness of strangers. It's Kevin Dillon.
Strangers, glory holes, bathhouses, and hopefully on the other end they look like a 50s Marlon Brando.
Well, I have heard that he runs around the streets of Astoria yelling, "Fella!" And finally, he's the Patreon supporter who sponsored this episode, and he knows what it takes to win an award. Please welcome back Steve Nikoloff.
Seeing as I have no brains or podcasting expertise, I just went out and performed sexual favors. 634 blowjobs in 5 days. I'm really quite tired.
634? Amateur. So, how does this work? Although this was a minisode, we actually did have a public poll of every Best Actress Oscar winner from Janet Gaynor in 1927 to Jessica Chastain in 2021. We tallied the votes, ranked the picks by popularity, and added them to a bracket. Now we argue about it and insult each other, all for your amusement. Want to play along at home? Go to greatpopculturedebate.com and find the polls and brackets tab. There you'll find the listener bracket for this and every episode of our show. Make a copy for yourself, fill it out, and see if your picks line up with ours. Now, before we start, I want to ask my panelists, what were some of the actresses / performances that you were surprised did not make the bracket? I will start in reverse alphabetical order. Steve, what were yours?
I have a few, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, so I'll just name one for now, but if the others don't get named, I may name it. But I think the one that I was most surprised about is Jane Fonda.
Just good one.
Yeah, Klute specifically is a movie that I absolutely adore that movie. I think it's a masterful performance on her part. And, you know, I just think that she's certainly not under-recognized as a talent, but I've just been happy to see her have a bit of a career resurgence later in her life.
Yeah, stan Jane Fonda, and I think this is one of those things where as the boomers, I'm just going to be very blunt here, die off, and the next generation kind of discovers more of her work, the whole kind of pall that was cast over her because of her political stance will go away, and I think people will just flat out embrace her. She's amazing.
Oh,
I
amazing.
think we should do a whole Jane Fonda episode because what an incredible life.
Fucking lootly.
Yeah, she's an icon.
Yeah, and I don't think she gets nearly enough credit, so that's a great pick.
I mean, for the workout videos alone.
Yes! My buns feel like steel because of her. Thank you, Jane Fonda. And the men of New York, thank you as well. I'm going to go now to Kevin. What's one of yours?
Yeah, so I went about this with two methodologies. One that's a pretty, I would say recent in terms of who actually ended up making the list, and that's Cher for Moonstruck. I'm really disappointed in the gays for that one because Moonstruck is a great movie. I guess maybe it's still underseen by younger millennials and beyond. Like I don't know if they're just not seeking that movie out. I'm not sure why that didn't make the cut because her popularity is peak strong, and I guess maybe people still don't recognize her talent as an actress. Could be.
Sure.
Which is a bummer because she's an amazing actress.
Yes, she is. And people need to snap out of it.
Yeah, I was gonna snap out of it, stupid. I'm a terrible Cher impersonator.
But you're very good at her off-brand discount cousin, Cher Cutery. So
Cher Cutery.
Any others
and
for
then
you?
another one that I looked at it from like old school perspective, that like with the phrase gaslight being so popularly used, I guess people didn't go back and watch the movie. It is on HBO Max. And I don't know, maybe some Ingrid Bergman could have made the list. But again, I guess people just know the phrase without the film. So what can I do?
Yeah, and wasn't Angela Lansbury also in Gaslight?
She was nominated. She was 19 and it was her first film.
That's fucking crazy. Good God.
Yeah.
All right, Carissa, how about you?
Yeah, so I actually have one actor who won for 2 different films and isn't represented at all in our bracket, and that's Hilary Swank for both Boys Don't Cry and also $1 Million Baby, which are both completely different roles. But like, Boys Don't Cry that film is really painful and difficult and iconic and did a lot for, I don't know, bringing queer conversations to the mainstream or showing struggles, and her embodying that role with such honor and sensitivity is just, really like makes sense why she won. And $1 Million Baby is also such an interesting conversation starter film, which is actually not about boxing. And yeah, she's just so strong. She's one of the people that I always really love, and we'll see her in most everything.
I was having this conversation with Kevin a couple days ago as we were preparing for this, and there's a real difference between movie stars and actresses. And I think Hilary Swank, I just refer to her as Swank, just like all cap, Swank. Swank is an actress, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's not a movie star to me, which is fine. She's a very talented actress. But it's just one of those things where I feel like weirdly she can't stay in the public consciousness, despite the fact that she won 2 Best Actress Oscars within, like, I want to say a decade, right?
Oh yeah,
almost less than 5 years actually of one another.
I honestly think that my problem with Hilary Swank is that both times I wouldn't have picked her to win. I would have picked Annette Bening.
And Annette Bening thanks you.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, I think that's why she just never really clicks on my radar.
Totally.
She's also kind of a chameleon, right? And it's hard to, someone who's constantly doing different stuff is hard to kind of keep an eye on,
Yeah, it's very true. Steve, you mentioned you had a couple others before we move on to mine.
Just 2 that I thought of. The first is a little more recent, but I honestly can't think of a movie recently that I've seen her in that I didn't like her in, and that's Renee Zellweger. I really enjoy her performances, and I thought her performance as Judy Garland in a movie that really wasn't so great. The performance was, I thought, spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one was Sally Field. I was surprised that she just got no love whatsoever, because I think that both the performances that she won for are good, but also people just seem to love her. And I was surprised that she didn't do better in a poll.
Yeah,
they didn't like her. They didn't really like her.
Yeah, maybe they don't love her. They only just like her.
They just like her.
I love Sally Field, and Sally Field has been working consistently for like 5 decades. And I agree that she was one of the ones I initially had on my list. I took off. I'm glad you mentioned her. For me, the ones that were very surprising, not making it, Halle Berry from Monsters Ball, who I believe is to this day still the only African-American woman to win the Best Actress Oscar, which is crazy. Let's just put that out there.
Yeah.
Shirley MacLaine for Terms of Endearment. It's one of my all-time favorite over-the-top roles, and we'll get into our personal rubrics as we go along, but I think you will find most of the time I'm looking for over-the-top. I'm looking for ridiculous. That's what, butters my toast. And she was in this movie. There was not a lot of subtlety in that performance. Faye Dunaway in Network. And then where are the gays that Joan Crawford or Bette Davis did not get on this list? I just want to apologize to the homosexuals out there. Not my call. It was the people who took the poll, and neither one of our icons, our petty icons, ended up making the list. So with that, let's get into these actual debates. First, the panel is currently split between ultimate number 1 seed Julie Andrews and Mary Poppins and 4 seed Vivien Leigh and A Streetcar Named Desire. Steve, deliver Julie a spoonful of sugar to perk up her chances to advance. Kevin, explain why Vivian Stella should get her groove back in round 2. I'll have Kevin go first.
And I am swayable on this one. So this was one of the films that I had to do homework on. I had seen it, but I had not seen I had seen it, but I haven't seen A Streetcar Named Desire in a really long time. And I actually think this was only maybe my second time seeing this film. I've seen the play on Broadway, one of the many, 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 many revivals that they do for it. But this is, I think, an acting tour de force for across the board. Like every single one of these people is just, oh my God, giving their best Southern Gothic wildness. But Vivien Leigh, who won 2 Oscars, one for Gone with the Wind, and of course one for this role as Blanche Dubois, is breathtaking. And one of the few people to probably, I will say this, deserve both of her Oscars. She's really, really fantastic in this. You know, just the mania, the sweetness, and then the way she plays off of each of her compatriots is just brilliant. And she wasn't the original Blanche in the play. Everyone transferred from Broadway to film except for Jessica Tandy.
I did not know that.
Yeah, Tandy, who eventually won her Best Actress Oscar in 1989 for Driving Miss Daisy. Yeah, and so everyone transferred. But I would guess it's has to do with probably looks. Because Leigh was, even though in the movie they make her seem like she's just this like haggard old woman, is beautiful still. And just, I mean, my tagline at the beginning was from Streetcar, because she just delivers those lines with wistful loveliness, and you know, it's a performance for the ages. It's one of, I think, the best Oscar wins for sure. It's just a brilliant performance. And I don't always love over the top, but boy, does the melodrama work here. It's very good.
I love melodrama. Ain't no drama like melodrama.
No.
Steve, talk to me about Mary Poppins.
Well, this was one of those matchups that I really wish Julie Andrews had been put up against Audrey Hepburn, because nothing makes me happier than the shade story of the year that Julie Andrews won her Oscar, with Audrey Hepburn getting the role that Julie Andrews had originated on Broadway in My Fair Lady, and then Julie Andrews really winning that sort of battle because she ultimately won the Oscar instead of Audrey Hepburn. But I will also say that one of the rubrics that I had throughout my thinking on these was how layered is the performance. And by layered, I don't necessarily mean happy and sad or melodramatic and not melodramatic, but what kind of range did they show? And I really think that Julie Andrews so subtly yet so effectively showed a lot of range in Mary Poppins. And I mean, hear me out on this. I mean, first, no question, Julie Andrews is so talented. I mean, she's extremely talented in a lot of different ways. I mean, she's a true triple threat. But Mary Poppins, the way that she played her is just she's so dark and so light and can switch so quickly and so easily in a scene. And there's a lot of sarcasm in her roles that the side eye alone she gives people in this movie should really have its own award for Best Actress. But I think, first of all, she sold Mary Poppins in a way that I don't think there's a lot of other people who could. I mean, Mary Poppins and Julie Andrews are sort of inextricably linked in a way that I think it was really tough for somebody like Emily Blunt and Brave to take on that role in Mary Poppins Returns. But also, I think that for the time of a little more one-note actress roles, there was a real mix of positivity, practicality, and what I would consider wit that were really refreshing from Mary Poppins. And I just love the way she transitions from incredibly kind to incredibly sarcastic to almost melancholy in, when she's singing the song, the Tuppence song, as like a lullaby. I mean, that's a really kind of effed up lullaby if you ultimately think about what that song is saying. So I just think for that, I think that her performance really, really showed a lot of range for, I believe, what was her first, at least American film performance.
So that was an excellent argument on Mary Poppins, Steve. This is a complete aside, but if anyone is a comic reader and you read the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen books by Alan Moore, he brings in Mary Poppins in the later
Oh, really?
and essentially Mary Poppins is God. And Mary Poppins is like omnipotent and, much like you said, Steve, like flips from being kind and sweet to like terrifying in seconds. It's actually very interesting.
But I will say, if you read the P.L. Travers novels, and I've only ever read the one, I mean, Mary Poppins was a much darker character. So,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that that's an odd call. I just think that the mainstream public who only knows the movie doesn't realize how different the character in the movie. Well, maybe they do now that they did that Tom Hanks movie, but
Sure.
But I think that that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, great point. I do want to put it to a vote. Carissa, where are you on this one?
This is really hard for me because
I agree.
I didn't rewatch this film. This is one of like two that I did not rewatch that are on this entire bracket. And so I was like, oh, it's Mary Poppins. Like, I kind of wrote it off because I had watched Streetcar several times, a bunch like in high school. And then later, because that this is an iconic film. And I grew up with Mary Poppins, but never thought of it in the same kind of way. And so I'm a little bit torn because I do think the Vivien Leigh performance is a tour de force, but it's also a little bit over the top, right? But when you look at it through the frame of the day, maybe it fits. But the Mary Poppins really is more layered. I don't know. Can I pass?
You
Can you come back?
You can. I think initially I had voted for Mary Poppins here, and I actually think I'm going to keep the vote for Mary Poppins. My feeling is I love the Vivien Leigh performance. I think it's incredible. I do think we have to note the fact that Mary Poppins was the ultimate number one seed in this poll.
Yeah.
And I do think in terms of like iconic roles, I'm not saying that Blanche Dubois is not iconic. Excuse me, it's Stella, not Blanche, right?
No, she's Blanche. Stella's the sister that Stanley's married to. Yep.
Right. Thank you. I do think Blanche is iconic, and but Mary Poppins is Mary fucking Poppins.
Yeah.
And I don't know that many other actresses could pull that off the way that Julie Andrews did. And I do think other actresses could have pulled off Blanche Dubois.
Well, they have. I mean, let's be honest. They have, like on stage. Yep. Maybe not in film, but certainly on stage.
Sure.
But also, Kevin cited Jessica Tandy. Like, that's someone who's done really incredible roles on film who probably could have done, Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Can I change my vote? I'm changing to Mary Poppins here.
Yeah. That's fine.
I am actually as well. And I think it's the argument of I hate to say this, but poor Emily Blunt, because she is so talented, but
I love her.
Yeah. Like he can't replace Julie Andrews, but you can replace Vivien Leigh, and it's been done well. So I'm going to go Julie Andrews as well. Clean sweep.
I hope Emily Blunt was paid well. And I just have to say that this whole thing is supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. So we are going to advance Mary Poppins, another tie vote between Katharine Hepburn in The Lion in Winter, a 3 seed, and Frances McDormand in Fargo, a 2 seed. Carissa, do not get snippy with me and explain why Frances and Fargo should make it to round 2. I will explain why I will banish myself to a tower if Hepburn and Lion do not advance. Do you want to go first, Carissa?
Sure. I'm going to start by saying that I had not seen The Lion in Winter until we started working through this bracket, and it was amazing. I remember texting Kate Rakulia and saying, I'm watching this film, and Kate was like, what do you think? And I was like, the dialogue is zippy.
It's so good.
It's so good. And I really loved it, but I have loved Fargo for decades of my life. And as someone who grew up in Wisconsin and does have the accent, although a little bit lighter, it's always been, that film has been kind of a background of my life. Like, I remember when it came out and the way that people in the media were talking about, the accents and the way that that was being portrayed, and also the way people were reacting to that. And also about there are people in Minnesota who were like driving along the highway looking for, you know, a windshield scraper stuck in the snow and a giant pile of money underneath, which does not exist because it's actually not a true story. It's been kind of a soundtrack for everything. And so I think Frances McDormand and the Coen brothers is an incredible combination. And I love her so much in all of their stuff. Blood Simple is amazing. And like it goes from there. So specifically about Fargo, she's playing Marge Gunderson, who is the chief of police in Brainerd. And these crimes are not, the crimes that are in the film are not something that they're used to seeing around there. Plus, she's pregnant. And so she's dealing with that and the morning sickness and the feeling like she's got to puke. And also these really grisly crimes, and also kind of trying to train all of the men around her, but doing all of it with such kindness and just on such an even keel. She's so funny and she's so caring in the scenes with her husband. And it's so Minnesota, the way that she challenges her colleagues. Like there's one scene where she's just, you know, where one of her partners is outlaying what he thinks happened. And she's like, I don't know that I'm 100% behind your detective work here. Just like, because that's how they do. And then there's also that scene in the hotel bar with her ex-classmate who's clearly in love with her, and the way that she kind of like is strong in asking him to stay on the other side of the table, but also like kind of being like, look, I'm married and pregnant, like I'm good, buddy. There's such a range here, and it's all done so subtly. And she's just such kind of an every woman in this role. And I think it represents something kind of different. You know, she's not a movie star in here, but she's a fucking movie star. And I love her. So Fargo.
I love Fargo. I saw it in the theater, and I love Frances McDormand. I think she's one of the great talents of our age. She just has the misfortune of being up against Katharine fucking Hepburn in this bracket. And Katharine Hepburn, I mean, we use the term iconic a lot on this show, drink, but like ain't nobody more iconic than Katharine Hepburn on this list, in my opinion. To that fact, she was the number 2 currently for number of Best Actress nominations. Only Streep has more. And she is still the most winningest Best Actress winner with 4 wins to her credit. I think Streep has 3. Is that correct?
Streep has 2 lead, 1 supporting.
Yeah, Catherine's are all in lead.
Yes,
Yep.
Because she is what? Sickening. But this particular win is super interesting because it is the scandalous tie of 1968, where both Katharine Hepburn and Barbra Streisand won Best Actress for 2 very different roles. Hers is for The Lion in Winter, which, if you have not seen it, is a play. It is very dramatic. It is telling the tale of oh my God, why did I just blank on her character's name? Eleanor of Aquitaine and Henry II, whereas Babs, who we'll be getting to shortly, is playing Fanny Bryce in Funny Girl, and just fucking amazing. But this particular role for me, Katharine would have actually made this top 16 bracket twice if we had not put in the rule that one role per actress could be on here. She would have made it for Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. I personally think this is by and away her best winning role. It is a spectacular performance from beginning to end. She is fire. She is ice. She is manipulative. She is resigned to defeat. She is ruthless in her ambition, and yet still somehow utterly under the grasp of Peter O'Toole's Henry II. Like, you want to talk about range. As Carissa mentioned, the issue, in my opinion, with McDormand and Fargo is she is an every woman, and that is a very specific skill. She realized it fully. I'm not knocking it. There is nothing ordinary about what Katharine Hepburn does in this movie. Her Eleanor of Aquitaine is a tour de force, and I loved everything about it, from her arriving in a fabulous ship, draped in furs, head held high, even though she's been living in exile, to the finish when she's literally cackling as she goes right back where she came from. Misery, what an icon. I loved everything about this movie, and I loved her especially. So with that being said, I'm putting it up to a vote. Kevin, where are you on this one?
I'm also with Katharine Hepburn. I know we talked about people playing roles again and again, and I will point this out. Frances McDormand is not the only person who has played Marge Gunderson. The role has been done on television by Alison Tolman, who was nominated for an Emmy and critically lauded for it and her own interpretation. And so I think what Frances McDormand has done is great. She has 3 lead actress Oscars as well. I would say this is 2 people who are winning for their best performances. I agree with you there, Eric. I think Eleanor of Aquitaine is the definition of Katharine Hepburn just being a fucking pro. Like, it is a pro performance. Like, other people have played that role, but who? Like, I don't know. Like, there's no other person who really lends the power, the vim, the vigor that Hepburn does in every single one of her performances. And she just is amazing. She's so effortless and yet brings such a great layered performance to this. It's just a genius role.
Yeah. Steve?
I'm going to switch my vote here. I had originally voted for Frances McDormand, and nothing against Frances McDormand because I love that movie. But Carissa was talking about it, and I think what I realized as she was talking is I like that movie, I think, more than Frances McDormand's performance is her best, where I think that Katharine Hepburn is truly a lead in The Lion in Winter, where Marge Gunderson is not on screen all that a ton. Not that should be the barometer, but I think that Catherine's just giving it all the whole time. And not that Frances isn't, but I just think that you guys have convinced me that that's just, how did I make such a grave error? And I'm Steve.
There's no bad choices here, right?
No,
I was going to say this.
they're both great.
But I will switch my vote to Katharine Hepburn.
Yeah, and I feel bad that McDormand is going out in round 1 because she's probably
the most likely person to actually equal Katharine Hepburn's number of Oscars, because Meryl's only got 2 in lead, and I don't think she win it 2 more times. But I definitely think Frances McDormand could win again.
Sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. She's one of our great talents of today. She's up against Katharine fucking Hepburn. And I do think it is the right decision for Katharine to advance. I hope you will be okay with that, Carissa.
It's fine. I just hope that people that this reinvigorates some interest in Frances McDormand. And if you have not seen Blood Simple, it is 100% my favorite Coen Brothers film. And I think it's her first movie, and it's amazing. And also Burn After Reading, she's so good in all of their stuff. And so revisiting their films to watch her is a win-win situation. So,
and I will say this for her really just quickly, and I don't want to go on and on, but I really do think that everyone who wants to see Frances McDormand give a really great performance as well should see 3 Billboards. Again, it may not be the best movie.
I don't know that I agree with that statement, but
well, I'm saying it may not be the best movie, but I think she gives an excellent performance.
I think she's always good. Literally, tell me the bad Frances McDormand performance.
I don't love 3 Billboards. I'm not going to lie. I actually think it is not very good. And she basically gave her acceptance speech as her character because that is her. I just don't like that movie. But that's me. His new movie is great. Go see it.
And also Nomadland. Aren't we all on the same page with Nomadland?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the new movie that you were talking about, Kevin?
Oh, Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah.
I just saw a commercial for that before we started recording this.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Currently, I'm the lone loyal subject for 4-seed Helen Mirren in The Queen, while the rest of the panel prefers 1-seed Kathy Bates in Misery. Steve, explain why you're Kathy Bates' biggest fan. I will panel Liz as I do literally nothing but subtly grimace as you all tell me how I should vote. I'll go first here, Steve, because I'm going to be real honest. I am not going to win this, and you might as well save your argument. In truth, this is one of the least exciting wins on the list for me. Like her main competition, I feel like this year was somehow Meryl for Devil Wears Prada, which, like, listen, I love that movie and I love that performance, but Best Actress for The Devil Wears Prada? Okay. But to me, it felt more like a Mirren Lifetime Achievement Award than an recognition for this actual performance, which, when we're getting into it, is a pretty narrow performance. It's extremely reserved. She's good as Queen Elizabeth II. She delivers that character as we all know that person to have been. But it's very reserved. Like, the most emotion you get from her is clipped irritation as she snipes at Tony Blair over the telephone. And that one really lovely moment that she shares at the broken down Jeep with the deer. But in terms of like memorable performances, if I'm being honest, the actresses on The Crown on Netflix have kind of made this performance a little bit moot. So then you're saying to yourself, but Eric, you voted for her. And here's why. I actually didn't find Kathy Bates, and I had never seen Misery till I had to do my work for this. I'd seen the play. I'd never seen the movie. And I didn't find
Wait. There's a play?
There's a play of Misery. And here's another stupid fun story for people who are listening and are just like, oh my God, Eric, will you shut your mouth? But like, I was a theater critic in Rochester, New York, and they did this play at Blackfriars, and it was very good. But the actress who was playing her character, whose name escapes me currently, had a bottle of pills in her giant sweater, and every time she moved, I just shake, and it drove me wild. This is wild. So there you go. That's a completely useless factoid for you. But that being said, I did not think Bates's performance is very good, but Oscar winning, like, I don't know. Where's Piper Laurie for Carrie, man? Like, that to me is a more like wowza performance than Annie Wilkes. That's her character's name. I didn't love it. So that's where I'm coming from. But that being said, I'm going to go around. I'm assuming I did not convince anyone with my don't vote for Helen Mirren argument. Carissa, you're going with Kathy?
Yeah, I mean, a movie where someone tortures a terrible writer, like, I'm 100% behind. But also, and I rewatched The Queen pre-recording post-Queen's death. So that was a really interesting and kind of lovely experience. But I think your comment about the actresses on The Crown kind of doing it and maybe doing it better, or so far they've done it at different phases. It's Kathy Bates for me.
Kevin?
Yeah, Kathy Bates. Absolutely. I rewatched The Queen and I had the same thought. I was like, I would have rather preferred butch, closeted lesbian Judi Dench in Notes on a Scandal. Give me that.
God. Give me that. Now that's a fucking performance. And that is a movie we need to talk about more on this podcast because it is one of my favorites. Steve?
I think Kevin actually made a good point there. Made me think of with Judi Dench, which is, if you want to win an Oscar, play a queen named Elizabeth, because both, or if you don't even win an Oscar, win an award. Period. Because didn't Helen Mirren win a Tony for playing Queen Elizabeth?
She won an Emmy. I know that. Yeah.
I think she might have won a Tony for, like, it was called the I can't think of it. I'll think of it. It was a Tony Blair, like, Queen Elizabeth play. But anyway, long story short, I just think that I'm going to save my argument, but I think Kathy Bates gives a really incredibly layered and subtle performance as Kathy Bates, or as Annie in Misery.
So we will be advancing Kathy Bates. Next, speaking of lesbians, we're evenly split between the sapphic psychological horror of Natalie Portman in Black Swan, a 3-seed, and one of Hollywood's greatest actual lesbians, 2-seed Jodie Foster in The Silence of the Lambs. Kevin, twirl and transform yourself in some monstrous hellbird in support of Portman and Swan. Hello, Carissa. Do what you can to keep Foster and the Lambs screaming into round 2. I'll have Kevin go first.
Is that you, Dr. Lecter? No, sorry. So I have seen Silence of the Lambs. I, shameless plug, am on our best picture winner episode. Mm-hmm. And we talk at nauseum about Silence of the Lambs and how much we love that film. And I think that Jodie Foster, another person who has won 2 Oscars, is very good in that movie. But I just rewatched Black Swan for an umpteenth time, and the physicality that Natalie Portman. I look at this role, and why I have Natalie Portman advancing is just she does what men are so often championed for doing, and I know you'll probably say this about Jodie Foster too, potentially, but she does so much is create that transformative, very studied performance, and then leads her film to, I believe it was 9 or 10 Oscar nominations as an actress, which is very rare, and then wins the award. And she learned to dance. She really studied this. She really gives one of these like mental anguish moments. And then she also tussles with Barbara Hershey, which is really fun to watch. And I just really think that what Natalie Portman does in this role, and I'm not always a huge Natalie Portman fan because I think sometimes she can overdo it, but I think this just gets it just right because you get apparently I like Best Actress performances where there's mania, because I've said that word a couple of times today already, but she's just so good. And when she lets loose and starts, again, lesbian alert, making out with Mila Kunis and like lets loose. And then when she gives that performance at the end at that ballet and really just like twirls, fucking nails it, bites her professors or bites the ballet or the director's lip and like just like feels the intensity of the performance and then maybe dies. We're unclear. Like she is just that definition of the person who struggled for her art, and she's just so beautiful at doing it. It's amazing. It's a great performance.
Thank you. Carissa, talk to me about Jodie Foster.
I mean, Aronofsky does that to his actors, right? Like The Wrestler. I have not yet seen The Whale, but you know, there's a lot of talk. It's really hard to argue against that. And even though I am arguing for Jodie Foster here, I will say I'm swayable. I watched both of these. I rewatched for I don't know how many time for both of them, at least 6, the same day. So it was a really fun double feature. But Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs as Clarice Starling, right? Starling, baby bird. And that's kind of how she is. She's like, we talked about this in the Best Picture thing, like that scene of her, it's very in the beginning where she's in the elevator and everyone's at least a head taller than her. And they're also all men. You know, the character that she's playing in this film is really treading this line between, you know, trying to hold her own in this masculine space and also, you know, she's learning and she's really vulnerable in a lot of this film. And she's putting herself fearlessly in these really vulnerable situations. And the way that she kind of plays, like, you know, there's so much danger in her interactions with many of the characters, but there's also like, there's this overwhelming curiosity that comes over it. And the way that she is respectful, she's always Dr. Lecter, you know, with Hannibal, regardless of where they're talking or what they're talking about. And, you know, you see how she's kind of like used and abused by the men around her and how she probably also very much knows this, but is still just, you know, doing her job very competently, very securely, but also she's probably internally freaking out because she doesn't, she's a student. She hasn't passed this stuff yet. She's learning. She's a sponge. There's a lot of layers here, but it's also really kind of subtle. But also just like seeing her in this role after, like Taxi Driver, and then, if the cultural fallout from that and how people were like, she's never going to be able to be a movie star. Like someone tried to assassinate the president to get her attention. And here she is in
If
Silence of
only
the
he
Lambs.
succeeded. No, that's write that out. Sorry.
No,
Sorry,
we're going to leave that in. You're fine.
Damn it. I don't need the FBI on me.
Speaking of FBI, Clarice Starling. So yeah, it's kind of a really interesting like re-entry into film. And being a high-profile actor in a different kind of but equally vulnerable sort of role. So it's lovely and amazing.
Hadn't she come back prior to that? Because didn't she win for The Accused before?
Yes.
She did.
So yeah, and that's another strength and vulnerability kind of role for her. So This is where I'm swayable, even though I'm arguing one side.
So Steve, where are you on this one?
Well, I was actually going to say, before everyone vote, I just want to think about, for the moment, I really think that when people think of Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins in The Silence of the Lambs, they think about the scenes that they did together. And you can't outact Anthony Hopkins in the material he's been given in that movie. She's going to seem diminutive in those scenes. I think what was so impressive about her performance in The Silence of the Lambs is actually the rest of the movie. It's the parts of the movie where she's not with Hannibal Lecter, where he's not chewing the scenery in his own staid way, and she's actually using her naivete to, I think, get ahead in her career. I actually disagree a little bit with Carissa, that I think she knows exactly what she's doing when she's out there with all these men and, just doing her job. And she's kind of like buttering up her, the guy who's the head of the behavioral analysis department. And, I really think that her best performance in The Silence of the Lambs lives in the scenes that aren't with Anthony Hopkins. So I'm still voting for Jodie Foster.
It's an interesting argument. So this is where we're going to get into like freshman psych or whatever, which is appropriate given the topic matter. But I agree with your take on her more than I think I agree with Chris's. And I love you, Carissa. But I think she knows exactly what she's doing. I think Lecter knows she knows exactly what she's doing. And I think the name Starling in and of itself, like we all know what starlings do as birds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
They go into other birds' nests and knock out their eggs and lay their own eggs, and then let the other birds raise them as thinking that they're their kids. And like I feel like that's what Clarice kind of does. Like everybody thinks that she's like the little diminutive one who no one needs to watch out for, but in fact she's actually quite sharp and is making her moves. That's again bullshit, like film criticism, something embarrassing I would have written in like 11th grade. But I hear all the arguments, and I'm not taking away from Jodie's performance. And I will say, other people have played Clarice Starling, and I don't think they've been as successful. I mean, Julianne Moore
definitely not.
and I love Julianne Moore. Julianne Moore was not a great Clarice Starling. Like it was just like
Julianne less.
Yeah. Jeez.
And then there was a CBS show about her that I didn't even watch. But
that's right.
Is it still on? I don't know.
It came on the heels of that Hannibal series. They were really trying to run that clock out.
And I mean, Hannibal was fucking great, but
I love that show.
Yeah.
But so
Matt Michelson, I honestly think is arguably a better Dr. Lecter.
Interesting. That's a debate for another day.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. I still find myself more enraptured by the performance in Black Swan. I think it's showier, which certainly kind of attacks my attention. It is a shinier object, right? But my God, does Natalie Portman just throw herself into that role? There is like at the end of the day, when you're writing the obituaries for these actresses, I realize it sounds very grim, but like, what is the one that's going to be written for Natalie Portman? It's gonna be Black Swan.
No, it's going to be Thor: The Dark World.
But I think Jodie Foster has certainly Silence of the Lambs is among her top credits, but I'm not sure it will be the defining credit for her. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess that would just my only question to that would be, what do you think is?
Well, they're going to start with Taxi Driver. Like,
You think?
Yeah.
I don't know. I do think it is going to be Silence of the Lambs for her.
I think it's the more complete performance for her.
Yeah. Although they could remember her for Chickapee Now.
I mean, and let's not forget the masterpiece that is Panic Room.
Panic Room.
I love Panic Room.
That's amazing.
With two Oscar winners, Jodie Foster and Forrest Whitaker.
That's right.
What's the one where it's her and McConaughey and the aliens?
Contact.
Oh,
Where they
Contact.
have no sexual chemistry whatsoever.
I mean, come on. But I love Contact. Like she's a great actress. This is another one. Like they're both great. So right now, I think we're still tied. Correct?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I didn't realize Katya entered the chat.
Because of the Contact.
Yeah. But I'm actually willing to switch my vote over to Natalie Portman because when I did rewatch those films, the thing that struck me, so I've seen a lot of these films, but watched them as like a film and didn't necessarily focus on one singular performance. So on the rewatch to prepare for this, I targeted in on those people and watching Natalie, who's, and all of these people are clearly like a big focal point anyway. But rewatching her in this and focusing on her, the physicality of this role just completely stunned me. And that's what gives it the edge for me here. So
there's a naked ambition in this role that I didn't find off-putting the way that I find it off-putting when, say, Anne Hathaway, whom I also love, is nakedly ambitious for an Oscar. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
this fits the character though too. Yeah. So because yeah.
So I think that's 3 for Black Swan, 1 for Jodie Foster. Are you going to be okay, Steve, if we move along?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. This was one of the ones I struggled with the most. I just love the Silence of the Lambs so much, but no, I think Natalie Portman is amazing in Black Swan.
So it looks like we will not Jodie Foster this type of behavior, and we will move Black Swan on to round 2. Next, the majority of the panel thinks that people who need 1-seed Barbra Streisand in Funny Girl are the luckiest people in the world. But Steve wants to get lost with 4-seed Audrey Hepburn and Roman Holiday. Carissa, explain why none of us should rain on Barbara's parade. Steve, channel your inner Italian and make sure that Audrey doesn't get the boot. I'm going to have Steve go first.
Yeah, that's good because honestly, this is not the hill I'm going to die on. This is my foray into. I really wanted to mention Roman Holiday before we get into the gay part of our bracket with Barbra Streisand, Elizabeth Taylor, and Liza Minnelli.
It hasn't been gay yet.
But I just really do want people to watch Roman Holiday. I think that people don't remember Audrey Hepburn. I mean, she's an EGOT for goodness sake. So it's not like she's a one-trick pony by any stretch of the imagination. This was also her first film. And she's so charming and so funny and so almost like a little bit Goldie Hawn-esque in Overboard. And I know that's not an Oscar-winning performance, but she has that quality about her that's just so, you can't take your eyes away from her. And I think that is worth watching. And I just think that her and, my God, my name is blanking. Is it Gregory Peck?
Yeah, it's Gregory Peck in that movie.
Gregory Peck are just so lovely together. And I more than anything, I just really wanted to have this little speech to be like, go watch Roman Holiday, but I'm not going to vote against Barbra Streisand. I mean, my God.
I will say, you can't do it. You will be attacked.
I can't do it. I can't make myself do it.
No. I had not seen Roman Holiday before doing the research for this, and I loved it. It's a really charming film. I was shocked that it was Audrey's first role. Like introducing Audrey Hepburn, I was like, excuse me, what? Like,
well, do you know the story behind the billing on that?
I don't.
The story behind the billing on that was they were going to do on the poster introducing Audrey Hepburn, and Gregory Peck was like, you can't do that. People will hate me because she's such a huge part of the movie that he made them put her movie above, or her name above the title on the promotional posters.
Oh, and like he was Atticus Finch. He was a good guy. That's really sweet. I thought it was a wonderful film. I think she's great in it. This is again, back to that argument, movie star versus actress. I think Audrey Hepburn is a movie star and she just has that magnetism to her. And there's not a lot of acting work to be done in this movie, but she's a star, and it was great to see her. So I agree, watch the movie, but I do think Babs is the better. I also think this was Barbara's first film, was it not?
It was.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we will be moving on with Barbra Streisand. Currently,
can I just say about Audrey Hepburn?
Yes.
So I think rewatched it, or maybe watched it for the first time. If I had seen it before, it was when I was a very early teen. And I think she's good in it. I think there's some problematic male-female relationship stuff in that film, but it's not my favorite Audrey Hepburn film. Like, I really love her in How to Steal a Million, where she plays the daughter of an art forger whose work accidentally becomes part of a museum collection, and she has to like steal it back. I think it's also with Gregory Peck. And it's kind of like this caper heist movie. And
right,
it's really right. And yeah, so I love this as an intro to her because she's just her haircut and her doe eyes and everything. But I don't know. It's not my favorite of her performances. Yeah. So
I think everyone knows her from Breakfast at Tiffany's, and I just want people to watch Roman Holiday.
Yeah.
And My Fair Lady, of course.
I think more people have seen My Fair Lady. I think Roman Holiday is the one that they don't even realize she won an Oscar for.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, that's true.
And watch How to Steal a Million. It's really, really fun and cute.
I do want to say that I think we need to do more classic film episodes of this podcast to elevate some of those films. And also part of it is we need to tell people where to find them, because I find it's very difficult to find a lot of these movies, but most of them are available on Amazon. You have to pay like $3 to rent, whatevs. But HBO also has a pretty decent one. I can't remember what I was watching, but it was on
my other plug is go to your local library and buy yourself a DVD machine. It's okay. It is okay, children. They do still exist, and they do connect to your television, and that is free.
And I will tell you too, if you live in Florida or in the Tampa Bay area, our local library has a streaming platform.
Oh, that's awesome.
Is it Canopy? Is it connected to Canopy?
I'm not sure. I've used it only a couple times, and they only have so many copies of a movie available, so sometimes you have to wait to be able to stream it. Like, they only have so many licenses, but yeah, it's pretty cool. Sorry, I digress. But
sponsor us, Canopy.
Yeah.
Canopy with a K. Yeah, you can rent whatever. It's like five movies a month or whatever, and I think it's 5 like seasons of a series a month. It's not episodes.
Wow.
If your local library is connected with them, it's awesome. My library has that. We have a couple of other things that are like free services that are really fantastic.
So
and Canopy gets new movies constantly. It's like new stuff.
The more you know, Star Wipe. That being said, we are going to move ahead with Ms. Streisand. Currently, it's a truth, not an illusion, that I am outnumbered supporting 3-seed Elizabeth Taylor and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, while the rest of the panel has no moral quandary picking 2-seed Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice. Kevin, I was going to tell you to provide an accent to Streep's chances for round 2, but frankly, I'm going to guess I'm not going to sway anyone here because it's Streep, so I will just drink myself into a stupor over the sad fate of Liz's bellicose Martha. My guess, I'll go first. I think this is a luck of the draw situation because I do believe that this is one of the great Oscar wins, in my opinion. I love this. Now, people may disagree with me because it is completely over the top. Like, there's not a shred of subtlety anywhere to be found in this performance. It is just utterly unhinged. She's barely even human. Like there's an animalistic quality to her that I found almost uncomfortable to watch, but I was still like, oh, I'm so in. Like, just watching her tear into Dick Burton and tear into Sandy Dennis and, oh God, George, what's his name? I'm forgetting, but he was on Just Shoot Me.
George Segal.
George Segal, thank you. It is so vicious, but that's exactly what the role calls for. It's what LB wanted. And, it's an older broken couple luring a simple young couple into their web and then just tearing each other apart. And then the young lovebirds for social support and to compensate for their own tragedies. And that really resonates with me on a deep personal level. So I loved it. Also, good to know that Liz is one of our first leading ladies to go ugly to win her Oscar. At the time, she was one of the great beauties of the world. And she put on 30 pounds and really leaned into the used up housefrau vibe for this role. So I don't think that swayed anybody because it's against Meryl. Steve, where are you on this one?
Oh, no, I'm still fully with Meryl.
Yeah, I assumed. Carissa?
Yeah, it's not just Meryl, it's Meryl and Sophie's Choice. So yeah.
And Kevin?
To be honest with you, it is a tough call, but it's that Virginia Woolf has been done many times and done well on stage. I had tickets to see Laurie Metcalf.
Oh my God, I was just going to say that's what I wanted to see.
It's never coming back.
I know.
And the pandemic shut that down. And from those who had seen it, they were like, she was going to win another Tony. And she had, I think, already won 2 at that point. And I was like, it's tough because I do love Elizabeth Taylor and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I do think she does such a great job of bringing and shining her talent through, because I think she is also one of the people who isn't taken seriously enough with her talent. But we'll talk about this a little later. Sophie's Choice is not a great film, but Meryl Streep is very good in that, and it is Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice, and yeah, it's got to advance.
So that's my ultimate winner going out in round 1. We love to see it. Next, the majority of the panel wants to say welcome and bienvenue to 1 seed Liza Minnelli as Sally Bowles in Cabaret, but Steve remains tickled by 4 seed Olivia Colman in The Favorite. I'll work the continent of Europe mile by mile, man by man, to explain why Tomorrow belongs to Liza. Steve, do what you can to bring Colman's Queen Anne a crown in round 1. Why don't you go ahead, Steve?
I mean, this is probably one of those ones where I'm not going to win either because it's Liza Minnelli. But first, I just want to say I think Olivia Colman may have been given the best Oscar speech ever. She was so surprised, understandably so. But it just showed the world how charming she is. And I love almost everything that I've seen her in, from Broadchurch to The Queen and everything in between. But to talk specifically about her performance as Queen Anne, I talked earlier about my rubric about layers, and I think that her performance as Queen Anne is maybe one of the most layered performances I've seen, definitely in recent memory, where she's just so depressed, but yet also so naive and yet smart at the same point in time. And you can see all of those things in her performance. And she plays with those nuances really, really, truly masterfully. And I always think of the scene where she comes out with her makeup on and she's so proud of herself. And she comes up to Sarah, played by Rachel Weisz, and Sarah tells her she looks like a badger and gives her a mirror and asks her what she looks like. And she's like, a badger. And you can just see in that moment her fall dead in the face. And then she leaves dejected. And then in the scene from the trailer that everyone remembers is her then yelling at the doorman who's like, did you look at me? Don't look at me. Why would you? It's just so funny. So the fact that in one literal 3-minute scene, she can go from so proud to so dejected to doing what is almost like a farcical comic bit, I think is just telling of how good this performance is. And her real sense of tragedy and pain also is so real with the bunnies from all of her lost children. And it's just devastating, but yet it doesn't overwhelm the performance or the movie. It's part of what she is, but not everything about what she is. And I just think that her ability to play so many different emotions and layers in a movie that is almost played like a farce, with the men being so over the top because that was the point, is that they're all stupid. It's truly the point of that movie, which is that they're just supposed to be so inane, and you're supposed to be focused on how smart and calculating these women need to be to exist in a man's world. I think she's the lightning rod that makes this movie work, that in lesser hands would have made this movie fall flat.
It's a really interesting argument. And I love that performance. I think it's a great movie. Again, luck of the draw. She's up against fucking Liza in Cabaret. And you want to talk about the range of emotions. Like, she comes out on that one and she's just a bat out of hell on the stage, right? She's just seductive and on the prowl. And then in her like moments with Brian, I think is his name. It's like the most boring white dude ever. She's just so naked in her vulnerability and her fragility, and she just wants to be loved. I thought this was a tour de force. Was this Liza's first movie? Does anyone know?
Ooh,
I'm looking it up. I don't think so, but it could be.
I think it was.
No, she was in
sure.
other stuff. It was close. It was early.
To me,
She was in smaller roles, but this was probably her first lead role.
I think this is the first role people truly know her for.
sure. And I just,
Like on film, I mean.
yeah. I just look at her and I was blown away when I saw her in this movie. And I saw it as an adult. Like I'd seen Cabaret on stage before I saw the movie. But I was just like, she just eats up this screen. Again, movie star versus actress. This is a movie star performance. She will always be associated with this role. And many, many, many people have played Sally Bowles aside from Liza Minnelli. I think they're all compared to Liza, and I think they all fall short of Liza. I don't think there's a better version, and it's a great character. I do think that there's a little bit of an edge for me, and maybe this isn't fair, for musical performances, because you have to have a greater range of talents. That's just the fact of it. And man, she just smashes this. There's not a single second of that screen time that she does not own. So for me, as much as I love Olivia Colman, and I do, and it's a great performance in The Favorite, although arguably, and I remember at the time, there were people like, shouldn't she be up for supporting actress and not best actress? Do you remember this?
Yeah. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Because it was Weiss, and was it Margot Robbie?
No, it was Emma
Emma
Stone.
Stone.
And actually, I think probably if I had to choose, Rachel Weisz was probably the lead of that movie. But
And I feel like that was part of the kind of narrative around that win was that really the lead role in that film? There is no question that Liza is the lead actress, right? And she dominates it. The men in that movie, besides the MC, are all fairly useless, but Sally is a lion. So, Kevin, where are you on this one?
I will say that you did a great job arguing for Olivia Colman. I think she is one of the best, most recent winners. And I think she, does a great job of sharing the screen with her cohorts. But I mean, you said this, there aren't a lot of a lot of these are musical performances. Not a lot of women won lead actress Oscars for musicals. It's just we just happen to have many in this bracket because some of them are the most memorable and best. And that is why it's Liza Minnelli for me.
Okay, Carissa?
Yeah, you can rub my legs, but I love Olivia Colman and I love The Favorite and I love her in this film, but I think all of the nuance, all of the range that she gives, Liza also gives while singing and dancing. And it's Liza for me.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Steve. I feel like we've knocked out a lot of your choices. Are you
that's okay. I'll be honest, a lot of this bracket was I'm just happy to be talking about these people. I think that they deserve another moment.
Absolutely. And if I've said anything dismissive, including Kathy Bates, who is an icon, legend, all of these actresses and these performances are amazing. So finally in round one unanimous victory, thank God, as 2-seed Julia Roberts and Erin Brockovich brushed 3-seed Diane Keaton, Annie Hall right out of the competition. That's it for round one, folks. We're going to take a quick break to verify these results with PricewaterhouseCoopers. We'll be right back after these messages. welcome back to our Best Actress Oscar winner debate. You came back. I can't deny the fact that you like us. Right now, you like us. That is the actual quote, not you like me. You really like me, by the way. Before we get to round two, let's discuss how listeners can find you all on social media so they can share a selfie that will break the internet. Carissa, how do people find you?
I am on Twitter occasionally and Instagram a little more frequently at Carissa Kloss.
Kevin?
You can find me trying not to at Lisa Rinna on Twitter at ET Kevin's Mind. I haven't done it yet, and I'm really proud of myself.
Oh, Kevin, own it. Steve, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter at S Nikoloff, like Resniak. I'm going to spell it. It's NIKOLOFF. ESQ, because I'm a fancy lawyer. And that's my handle, at S Nikoloff ESQ.
Great. And as for me, you should definitely follow at Great Pop Culture Debate on Instagram and TikTok and at culture_debate on Twitter. But feel free to follow at Eric Resniak on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's ERIC, REZ as in zebra, S as in snake, N as in Nancy, YAK. So let's move on to these round twos before they cut off our acceptance speeches. It's a pretty fabulous Elite Eight. We were saying as we were on the break that we're very swayable on all of these because there's not a bummer in the bunch, as Kara would say. First up, it's Julie Andrews and Mary Poppins versus Katharine Hepburn in The Lion in Winter. We're going to go around the horn. I'm going to start with Carissa. Where are you on this one?
So both of these are people that I hadn't initially picked to move forward on my bracket, but and both of these roles are incredibly iconic. I'm going to fall back on my earlier rubric and say that Julie Andrews gives us range and singing and dancing. So I'm going to move her forward here.
Kevin.
I am with Katharine Hepburn in The Lion in Winter.
Steve.
I'm gonna stick with the horse that I argued in the first round and go with Julie Andrews.
I'm very torn here because if I'm being honest, I think that Hepburn has the better performance. Julie Andrews has the more iconic performance. But the thing that I keep thinking about, and this isn't fair, but I'm just going to say it, it's not even my favorite Julie Andrews performance. And I don't even think, was she nominated for Victor Victoria?
She was.
Yeah.
Like, that to me.
She lost to Streep in Sophie's Choice.
God damn it.
Yep.
But like...
I agree with you, Eric. I actually ultimately agree. I think Victor Victoria is a better performance.
If you haven't seen Victor Victoria, by the way, go watch that.
Amazing.
Not only is she great in that, but Leslie Ann Warren is amazing in it. And
so good.
I love her so much.
It's such a good movie. And I mean, like Jazz Hot is like, how is every drag queen not still doing that number?
I know.
Anyway, I digress. But I feel like I need to go with Kate Hepburn here again. Also because in terms of like Oscar winning actresses, she is more important to the like topic than Julie Andrews is. And that may not even be fair. You're like, that's not the point of this, you stupid. Like it's about the performance versus performance, but performance versus performance, I'm still giving it to Hepburn here, which brings us to a tie. So we have not done any tiebreakers yet. Steve, because you're the Patreon sponsor for this, I'm going to give you the first tiebreaker. Where are you going to go?
Only because like I prefer seedings more than tiebreakers. You said Julie Andrews was the number one seed.
Yes.
I'm going to stick with Julie Andrews.
Okay, so we will advance Julie Andrews into the final four. Next up, it's Kathy Bates in Misery versus Natalie Portman in Black Swan. Actually, very similar performances in some ways.
Yeah.
Which I kind of love. So I'm going to start this time. Steve, you go first.
Well, I'd like to talk about Kathy Bates if she's going to lose to Natalie Portman, but I'm going with Kathy Bates.
All right. I'm going to go to Kevin next.
I am going with Natalie Portman.
Carissa.
I'm leaning Natalie, but I also think that we should talk about Kathy Bates here.
I think we need to talk about Kathy. So, Steve, why don't you go ahead and drop us some science on Annie Wilkes?
Yeah, I think that it's funny because in like 90, 91, 92, the Academy went through like this real, like almost embrace of the horror genre because this is the year after or year before, I forget, Silence of the Lambs. And a year before, and then Silence of the Lambs was a clean sweep of the all 5 awards. But that's not really the point here. I think what really draws me to Annie Wilkes is and Kathy Bates is the subtlety of her performance for the most part. I mean, obviously I know she goes cray cray at the end, but throughout the movie, like, she plays kind and crazy again at the same time. And this goes back to my layered performance rubric. I'm trying to stick to my rubric, which is, you as the viewer, if you don't know how crazy she is at the start because you know the character, you will have to be shocked by what she's able to do with a wink and a smile, and to the extent of literally hobbling somebody. And I know it's a hard performance to watch because Misery can be a hard movie to watch, but I actually only ever watched it for the second time in preparation for this podcast. I just had never been able to bring myself to watch it again. And I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. It's so creepy, but she has such a calm demeanor for a lot of the movie that you just don't know what to make of her. And she's so adept at making Annie terrifying without ever really going over the top, even in the first part of the movie. And it reminds me slightly of Meryl Streep as Miranda Priestley in The Devil Wears Prada, where she never raises her voice in that entire movie, yet the entire staff is terrified of her. And it's kind of a similar vibe that I really like at making the audience feel something without ever like raising your voice or changing your tone. And Annie Wilkes is very well educated. I mean, obviously she's a nurse, but she's also super naive and childlike at the same point in time with her obsessiveness about this character of Misery Chastain. And I just think she portrays it so well. And like, I get that Natalie Portman plays a very similar character with dancing and all that stuff. But I mean, on some level, Kathy Bates walked so Natalie Portman could fly. I don't know. That's the best argument I got.
No, it's an interesting argument, and I do gravitate towards the part where you were talking about really the performance there is not when she loses her mind. It's the childlike naivete that, because one of the things I was thinking in my votes against Kathy Bates here was I have seen Kathy Bates be far more terrifying in many more projects than Misery. Like the hobbling scene, Hobby Lobby, like that obviously is a completely different animal, right? But like, she's terrifying in some of the American Horror Stories, and in even other performances she can be really intimidating. And she isn't necessarily intimidating in this movie at the level I was expecting her to be, but that may have been a very deliberate choice to sucker you in so that those actions are all the more shocking. Did anybody else get swayed?
No.
I think it's part of like when you come to the film. So I was married to a writer for 17 years and never saw this movie until I was not married to a writer. And so it hits, some really specific places for me. But I love Kathy Bates. I think she's so good at kind of, I don't think it's in this character, it's not like a growing to terms kind of thing. It's a revealing of layers. But I also love her in stuff like About Schmidt, where she does a nude scene in that film. And she's just, I'm a little all over the place, but I'm going to stick with the physicality of the ballet dancing for Natalie.
Kevin?
I'm sticking with Natalie, but I think, Steve, you brought up a lot of really good points. And I think Kathy Bates is such an interesting Oscar win. And I know you said this at the beginning. It was at this point where the Oscars were kind of going a little off book. And they did that a lot in the 80s. They awarded more older actresses, some comedic performances, some performances that were grounded in thrillers. And like, it was a super interesting period where they had even nominated like a Sigourney Weaver for Aliens. And so I think Kathy Bates is a product of that, and it's a really good win. I just think Portman is just such a next level win in many ways. So I'm going to stick with Portman, but it was a tough choice.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with Portman here. The only other thing I would say is I don't think I found Annie that surprising as a character because I'd lived with my mother for 22 years. And so the idea that someone can come off as this sweet and kind of simple and quiet, unassuming person, and then be just absolutely fucking terrifying behind the scenes, like, I got that. Like, we're good. So, Natalie, it is. We're gonna
real quick, Eric. Before we leave that, I just want to make I just think it's crazy. It's crazy to me that Misery was directed by Rob Reiner.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
That's fucking wild. Excuse my my language, but and then also, if you think that the hobbling scene is terrifying in the movie, go read the book.
Yeah, because it's not. Yeah, the book is worse.
They said it was too much for a movie.
sure, I can believe
Yeah,
that.
and she cried before she filmed some of the really violent scenes against my beloved Sonny Corleone. It's like the film is really incredible in just like a two actors kind of tour de force.
Yeah.
It's, in a really confined space and just intensity playing off of itself. So it's a worthwhile journey.
Yeah, and I just have to. How you direct The Princess Bride, Misery, When Harry Met Sally, and The American President. I mean, just what the hell? What the hell is
Range.
that?
Range, baby. Yeah, amen. We should do a Rob Reiner film episode at some point.
That'd be fun.
Oh, that would be fun.
It would be fun. So next up, it's Barbra Streisand in Funny Girl versus Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice. I'm going to start in the middle of the order. Kevin, where are you on this one?
I'm going with Meryl, and I want to. If Barbara goes out, I have to tell the shady Barbara story. So, but I'm going with Meryl because it is an exquisite performance.
Steve.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Meryl as well. I have my issues with Sophie and Sophie's Choice,
Yep.
but I just it's Meryl. Yeah, it's Meryl.
Carissa.
Yeah, I hadn't seen either of these films until I got this assignment. And
Sacrilege. How have you
Yeah.
never seen Funny Girl?
I know. And
I did this to Kate the first time I recorded, and I said, stop the podcast. But,
and I was an English major, so how have I not seen Sophie's Choice, right? Like, we use that phrase all the time. And I was just blown away by both of these films and how amazing they are. But, like, Meryl and Sophie's Choice was next level for me. So, yeah.
I will continue to vote for Barbara because I am homosexual. But I do want to hear your shady Barbara story because she's going out, Kevin.
Yep. So the rumor that always persisted in Hollywood over Barbara was this her first film, was inducted into the Academy as an actor in the actors branch before she was nominated for this performance. And I think you know where I'm going with this, maybe.
I didn't know that.
The rumor is that she tied with Katharine Hepburn. So in true Leah Michelle funny girl form, she voted for herself. And voila, there was a tie. And so they jokingly, poor Barbara. I mean, Barbara is such a talent. And so the terrible rumor that has chased her, she has 2 Oscars, so I don't feel that bad because she has one for song as well. But the terrible rumor that followed her all those years was that she voted for herself and it allowed her to tie with Katharine Hepburn. When, if you watch these 2 films, these 2 performances, they're both knocked out this round, sadly, but great deserving performances.
Absolutely. And
That's a wild story.
It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
If you have not listened to it, we have a Barbra Streisand song episode in season 6, and you will hear many other scandalous rumors about Barbara. And I think it is very telling that she's one of those people in Hollywood that keeps getting all these rumors spread about her.
Yep.
I think because she is strong, she's independent, and she does things her way. So, of course, we're going to try to drag her down.
Please tell me the white microphone on Oprah story came up.
I do think it gets mentioned, yes.
Yes!
So,
And please tell me that the mall in her basement came up.
yes, that is brought up. So, go listen to the best Barbra Streisand episode. Last
Wait, is this where we say goodbye, gorgeous?
Goodbye,
Oh.
gorgeous.
Oh.
By the way, do not watch Funny Lady. It is
No.
terrible, but I hope she got paid well. Next, and last in round 2, Liza Minnelli in Cabaret versus Julia Roberts and Erin Brockovich. I'm going to go back to the top of the order with Carissa.
I'm all over the place with this. It looks like I initially went with Cabaret probably for the singing and dancing +1, but I am swayable here if someone wants to try.
Okay. Kevin?
Liza with a Z.
Steve?
No, I'm all over Julia Roberts in this performance.
So shockingly, I actually might also go with Julia here, and I'm going to tell you why. Everything I said about Liza in round 1 is correct. She's amazing in this movie. It is like she will forever be associated with that character. I had not watched Erin Brockovich since I saw it in the theater until I watched it again for this, and I watched it on the plane home from a business trip where I actually met Steve for the first time in real life. And I was like, holy shit, Julia Roberts is great in this film. It is you were talking about it with Frances McDormand, where she's playing an everyone, right? It's not like she's a president or a queen or a cabaret singer. She is just an average, ordinary mom.
She's a single mom.
She's a single mom, and sisters are doing it for themselves. There is something about, like, Julia Roberts has charm, right? That is the number one thing in her arsenal. It always has been. And she is, to me, Kevin and I had this discussion too, our last great movie star. We have many amazing actresses that are working right now, but in terms of that megawatt star, she's like the last great one we have. There have been a couple that have come since then, but like Julia Roberts, I think, is really where it's at. This was her Oscar win. It was a kind of perfect Oscar win in some ways, right? Like she was up against some real contenders for this one. Like this was Ellen Burstyn for Requiem for a Dream, right?
Oh, shit.
It was.
And a lot of people were pissed.
Here we go. Yeah.
People were pissed that she did that Burstyn got robbed, because that, I mean, you want to talk about a performance. Holy shit.
Yeah. But it's a lot less screen time.
I was just going to say.
I mean, you want to talk about contenders. She was up against Joan Allen in The Contender.
Right.
That's one of my top 5 favorite films of all time. It's fucking incredible.
And I just but Julia winning here still feels correct to me, even though it's a quote small role. And like it's the movie star getting honored for doing what is a quote small quiet role, but to perfection. Right? Like I can't think of a single decision she makes in that movie or just like, I don't know. Like it is 100% correct the entire way through. And I'm not watching Julia Roberts, even though she's a movie star.
No.
Don't forget, she goes toe to toe with the inspiration that is Tom Girardi.
Correct. And actually the actual Erin Brockovich, who is the waitress in the diner scene.
Yeah. That's right.
But speaking of that too, if I may, Eric, real quick, her chemistry with Albert Finney in that movie, and I'm saying like, and that's a testament to him too, but that's a testament to her as well. Like their dynamic is just electricity.
And it's completely believable, right? Like,
yes.
If you haven't seen it, which please go see it, like, it's a true story of this woman who, like, we won't get into the backstory, but she used this lawyer. It didn't work out and she needs a job. So she literally just shows up at his law office one day and bullies her way into getting a job. And you're like, this lawyer would do this, but you're like, no, this lawyer would do this because that's who this woman is.
And she's incredible. And she turns out to be incredible at it.
Correct.
Because she's tenacious, because the skills she uses to get there are the skills she uses to get all the rest of the things. And she's a people person. And that, like, it kind of, like, this role kind of elevates another completely valid and underrated set of talents.
Agreed.
Like the scene, so I saw it in the theater and then not until like a week ago when I was doing research, and the scene where they're like, you don't even have contact numbers for all these people, like how, and she's like, oh, whose number do you want? Let me tell you everything about them and also their sister and their family and the problems they're having and all of it. And she just like
and do you want their fucking diseases?
Yeah,
it's like strength and validity in like the single mom skill set, right? Because it's massive. Like the coordination you have to do of schedules, like the feeding and the caring, it's incredible. And
but
so
yet also, if I may, Chris, I interrupt you for just a second.
No, go ahead.
The movie also shows her struggles with that.
Yes,
yeah.
and it's because it's not recognized as a skill set.
Yeah, it doesn't glamorize single motherhood.
No.
She does an excellent job, and actually, some of the deleted scenes are even better, where she's like stealing cough syrup from the grocery store because she's trying to like get cough syrup for her baby that she can't afford. And so it does nothing to glamorize San Bernardino County sort of poverty and single motherdom in the 1980s.
I'm glad they cut that. I feel like I never pitied Erin. And I think that's one of the things
that's a good point.
So I'm glad that they cut scenes like that, because that just loses some of the core of what I love. Erin Brockovich. It's probably one of my favorite winning performances. I think it is great. I hate that people disregard Julia Roberts' win. I think she's so good. I'm not going to be mad about her if you three move to her advancing. I personally am sticking with Liza because, I mean, she's just perfect, and she encapsulates so much. I think of the folks that are remaining that are in musicals, she's the best and better than Julie Andrews. But again, both of these are great performances.
And I think to the point of trying to convince people to vote for Julia Roberts, I think it's the role that finally encompassed all of her talents into one role that was able to showcase her and let people know what she was actually capable of.
Yeah, I agree. It was the moment that kind of made her legit, and I think certain people's minds. She had been a huge box office draw for years. She'd also had a stretch of slumps, a stretch of flops. This was really no, she is a legitimate actress, and we've been taking her for granted. And I love that as an Oscar story.
And it's not a romantic lead performance from her, which is what a lot of her other stuff was. Yeah, she's in a relationship in this film, but that's not even, I mean, he's a glorified babysitter.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. That said, I would hit it. I'm sorry.
Wait, him or her? Because
both, actually. I find her very attractive in that film, and I'm
she's
as
fucking
gay
hot
as they come. But she's a hot.
I mean, she
When
puts
she
the
goes to that-
boobs front and center, and she's unapologetic, and she fully acknowledges the power of them.
I was just going to say, when she goes to that water board and convinces the clerk to let her back because she just leans on the counter, that's. Yeah.
And then a sequence or so later, she's back there with her two kids, running havoc in that place. And she's still just she's making copies of all of the if you have not seen this film since the 90s, you should rewatch it because it is really, really good.
I think it's 2000s, isn't it?
It's 2000 because she won in 2001.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, early 2000s.
So I think right now the only Liza vote is Kevin, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm swayed. I'm going with Julia.
Yeah, and I'm hard with Julia. Excuse my language.
I mean, they're called boobs, Steve. All right. So with that being said, before we get to those final four matchups, we're going to take a quick break to check on how Glenn Close is doing. We'll let you know right after these messages. We are back for the final rounds of our Best Actress Oscar winner debate. On our way up to the podium to collect our award, we fell on the steps. Oh my gosh, we're so relatable. All right, let's take a look at this final four. It's Julie Andrews and Mary Poppins versus Natalie Portman versus in Black Swan, Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice versus Julia Roberts and Erin Brockovich. We were saying during the break that none of us had picked this, so this is going to be really exciting to see how it goes down. Do I think it's the correct final four? The trick with this one is I don't think there was a correct final four. It could have gone any way. I do like that we have a range of years present here. We have Mary Poppins is 60s?
64.
Sophie's is 70s.
No, Sophie's is 80s. It was 81.
Oh, okay. Brockovich is 2000s. Is Black Swan 2010s?
Yes, 2010 actually, just 2010, I think.
Okay, so we've got a nice range there, and we have a musical, a thriller, a docu, and two docu ones, but none that are historical documentaries, they're real people documentaries. So that's cool. All right, let's get into it. Julie Andrews and Mary Poppins versus Natalie Portman and Black Swan. I'm going to start with Steve.
I'm sorry. I know that blank hair is not good. I'm going to go with Julie Andrews.
Okay. Carissa.
I'm a little torn here, and this is really possibly shitty of me, but I'm going to go with my recency bias and frequency watching of Black Swan and go with Natalie Portman here.
Okay, Kevin?
Of these two, I am going to go with Julie Andrews. Yes. Yep.
I'm also going to go with Julie Andrews here. If we're talking about, at the end of the day, looking at legacy stuff, I feel like this is a legacy role and win for Julie Andrews. Again, it's not my favorite Julie Andrews performance. I'm not even sure it's in my top 3 Julie Andrews' favorite performances, but it is one that is forever associated with her. And I don't know. I feel like Portman's had other stuff. So that may be contradicting directly something that I said maybe an hour ago. But I don't care. So that's where we are. I'm going with Julie Andrews. So then we are advancing. It's 3-1 for Julie Andrews. And then next it's Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice versus Julia Roberts and Erin Brockovich. I'm going to start with Carissa.
I'm with Meryl Streep here. And I'll talk about it more if I need to.
Okay, Kevin?
I am also with Meryl Streep. I will just say this. I don't think Sophie's Choice is a good movie, and we can talk about that later when we have to get to it. But I think she's just so good, especially in the back half of the movie where we get to really see her do more. So I am going to go with her as well.
100% agree with you.
Steve?
I'm actually going to go for Julia Roberts. I think it's a more complete performance from beginning to end. And Kevin, you stole my thunder a little bit, which is no offense, but is everyone knows the iconic, and we haven't talked about it at all, but everyone knows the iconic scene from Sophie's Choice. But there's a lot of that movie that drags for me, and I'm not discounting her performance, but I just think Julia Roberts from literally moment 1 when she gets in that car accident to almost the last scene when she's in her new office in the new law firm is a more complete arc from beginning to end of a performance. I'm not talking about the story or the movie, and I understand that Sophie's Choice is it's a gut-wrenching movie and it's hard to watch. And I'm not discounting Meryl's performance, but if you want me to go from performance from beginning to end, I think it's Julia Roberts.
Okay, so I agree. That's a great argument, and I do think that Julia is. We just talked for 5 minutes about how I think Julia's amazing in that, and I think it's a great Oscar win. But if I'm looking at this and I'm looking at a final 2, I think Meryl Streep is synonymous with the Oscars, and I think this is. I'm not going to say it's her defining Oscar win because I'm thinking Doubt has got to be up there.
She didn't win for that.
She didn't win for Doubt?
No.
Oh, shit.
She won for Kramer versus Kramer. Yeah. She won for Sophie's Choice, and she won for The Iron Lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't get to talk about my least favorite Oscar wins, but there you go, bringing it up.
Is it The Iron Lady?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oof.
I feel like this is her best Oscar win, and so
yeah.
Given that,
can I say something real quick,
yes,
Eric?
Please.
I actually think what's ironic about Meryl Streep's career, other than Kramer versus Kramer, which I really like, and she's supporting in that, is I don't think she ever won for her best performances.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's the part of the reason I don't want to vote for her in Sophie's Choice is I just don't love her in Sophie's Choice.
What? Okay, now I need you to
disagree. Yeah. I think she's transcendent in this film. I hadn't seen it until the bracket assignment, and I was incredibly transfixed. She is next level, no filter beauty in this, and she's so vulnerable, and she's so she's fucking Meryl Streep, but after the first 10 minutes of the film, I completely forgot that.
She
became Sophie. The accent was so real. The vulnerability was so real. The experience of what she had been through, I believed it 100%. And I did not even see her as a person in this role. Whereas with like, I know that Erin Brockovich is a real person and that Julia Roberts was playing her, but I never didn't see Julia Roberts in this role. And I fully forgot this was Meryl Streep.
And I think that's fair. I think what I'm saying is, and I think what I'm losing and I need to get back on track of is, I don't love the movie, but her performance is
Yeah, I agree with you.
phenomenal. I mean, like, that, I think that's where I got to go. You know what? Honestly, I'm going to change my vote to Meryl Streep. If I go with my rubric that I've been using the whole time, and I can't stop using it now, is I've got to take Meryl Streep's performance and not the movie itself. And Meryl Streep's performance in that movie is, like you said, Carissa, it's next level.
And
Yeah.
Steve, you're bringing up something that is the common trend, and I wanted to bring this up during the podcast of Best Actress, is there are often a lot of Best Actress winners that are amazing, but their films aren't great. They're not
Yeah.
they're not good films. Still Alice.
Mhm.
I know I'm going to get hate for that one. It's a bad movie. Julianne Moore's great, but it's a bad movie.
Well, so is The Eyes of Tammy Faye, but I thought Jessica Chastain was pretty good in that.
Exactly. It's
Silver
just
Linings Playbook.
Silver Linings Playbook, another one. I mean, I could go on and on forever, baby. That's one of my favorite lines from it. But there's just so many actresses that, in the modern era, like, and I'm going to say starting in the 80s where that is the case. And that's because they were making vehicles for women to shine and show their talents, but they weren't giving them the auteur credibility. They weren't putting as amazing, like Alan Pakula directed All the President's Men, but after Sophie's Choice, if you look at his directing credits, it is a literal trash can. It's not good. And so it's just unfortunate that you get this. I mean, Erin Brockovich is a stellar movie. It is a great film. She's great in it. It's just the thing about Sophie's Choice, because I do agree with you. I think I think it's a middling movie.
Yeah, it's not terrible. It's just not. It's not
Great.
a great movie.
Yeah.
No.
But she is the most vulnerable I've ever seen her, maybe. Well, I guess, oh my God, Cry in the Darkness, she's also pretty raw and vulnerable, as Katharine Hepburn called this her accent face. But this really is her best.
Yeah, it is. And I think that I need to remember that we're talking about Best Actress, not Best Picture.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Fair point.
To that point, Eric, I'm going to change my vote to Meryl Streep.
Okay, so that was a very intense debate, and I loved listening to it. We will go to then a final two of Julie Andrews and Mary Poppins versus Meryl Streep and Sophie's Choice. This is a, what do you call it? Sophie's Choice.
This is Sophie's Choice.
It is. Do you go with Julie or do you go with Meryl? I'm going to start with Carissa.
Honestly, I thought we would use the phrase Sophie's Choice a lot more in this episode and a lot more problematically. I'm with Meryl here. I saw it really recently and was completely absorbed and blown away. And I did not I don't think as an ensemble film, it's not great. Like the people she's playing off of are not great. And the work that she's able to do is incredible. So Meryl all the way for me.
Kevin.
Pass.
That's okay, Kevin. I don't mind going if you want. If you want to pass,
Steve. Go next, Steve.
I struggle with this because I think they're so different.
Yeah.
But I think, okay, you know what? I'm going to go back to my rubric of layered. And not that Meryl Streep's performance in Sophie's Choice is not stunning. I mean, stunning. But I think that actually Julie Andrews shows a little bit maybe more range in, I don't know, in Mary Poppins. I'm maybe just pulling stuff out of my butt here, but there's something about Mary Poppins with, I was talking about when I very first argued for her very first argument of the very first round was that she can go from positive to sarcastic to almost a little bit diabolical a span of a scene. I'm not going to pass two.
You're going with Julie.
I'm going with Julie Andrews.
Kevin.
This is tough. It's like favorite versus best for me, and that argument online is something that happens all the time. I feel like people conflate their favorite and the best, and sometimes they are the same. They can intertwine and they can be the same. I'm gonna go back on of these two. Like, Mary Poppins is hands down my favorite movie. I used to watch that movie. Like, I probably could have broken the VHS tape. I watched that movie so many times as a kid. And I
used to have it on picture disc.
Oh, shut up. I love that. That's amazing. That's amazing.
It was 2 picture discs.
And we are all now showing our age.
Oh, my God. And I think Julie Andrews was one of those like personas that I knew very indelibly as a kid. And then I grew to find her stuff with her husband who, who directed some of her best work, including Victor Victoria. And so I think Eric and I both had said this, is like, I kind of prefer Julie Andrews' performance in Victor Victoria. And Victor Victoria is the same year as Sophie's Choice. So by the transitive property, I don't know where that lands me, but I think I'm going to go with Meryl Streep.
Steve, are you going to be very upset if this is the second episode that you've sponsored, and I don't think you've won either one of them? Is that
in the last one?
No, but I'll be honest with you. Like, don't cry for me, Argentina.
Oh, she didn't get nominated.
No. But in all seriousness, this is the Sophie's Choice. Yeah. I don't know which to pick. I could have picked either one. So if you all want Meryl Streep, and by that I mean, like, I think you heard me struggle. I could have easily voted for Meryl Streep.
Yeah, it is a tough call. It really is.
And it just goes to show how hard it is to when you get down to like the top 8 or the top 4 or the top 2, and you're talking about performances in just very different genres. That doesn't mean one is better than the other. Yeah, it just means they're so different. What's the rubric anymore?
Sure. Yeah. So for me, that's a great point. Like I was saying early on, that my rubric is more for the big showy pieces. But if I get down to it, I'm talking about the art of acting, right? And if we're talking about these two performances, which one is more the art? I mean, it is the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And the art of acting there, I give it to Meryl.
I think that's right. I'm actually going to change my vote to Meryl too. That's the right choice.
Yeah, I mean, this was Meryl before she was Meryl. Now we expect this level of professionalism.
And I think Kevin will agree with me. This is the last Oscar Meryl should have won.
Yeah, I think. Doubt.
Oh, excuse me. Last Oscar that she actually won that she should have won.
That is, yep, I will agree with that.
I'm sorry. I should say that because I said she's got better performance. This is the last Oscar that she actually won that she should have won.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, what about The River Wild? But
I mean, she's great in The River Wild.
But
I'll say this: she hasn't.
What about The Hours?
She's great in The Hours, which she wasn't.
The Hours is amazing.
Look, I'll tell you, if I use my Kathy Bates argument, she wasn't bad in The Devil Wears Prada.
No, she's fucking iconic in that role.
I mean, that's honestly probably one of her most known roles in amongst Gen Z or whatever they're calling themselves now, Zoomers or.
Yeah,
she kind of Hannibal Lectered herself in that movie, in all honesty, because she is technically the movie's about Andy.
Sure, that's true. And listen, I'm not trying to talk shit on Devil Wears Prada. People listen to this, like I'd be like, "Oh, boo!" No,
we're We're just talking up Meryl. You're fine, Eric.
Okay, good. All right. So there you have it, folks. Our pick for the best actress Oscar winner is Meryl Streep in Mamma Mia. No, I'm just kidding.
The second one where she's a ghost.
Exactly. Here we go again.
Spoiler alert.
Honestly, she should have won for Death Becomes Her.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yes.
pour one out.
Anytime she doesn't sing, I'm good.
Yeah.
But the real pick is Meryl Streep in Sophie's Choice. Do you agree with our choice? Do you think that Jack Palance read the wrong name in the card? Let us know your pick by leaving a comment on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com or yell at us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. While you're there, make sure you like and subscribe for more Great Pop Culture Debate content. And if you really liked what you heard, please consider supporting us on Patreon, which you can get access to more exclusive episodes, merch, and the ability to suggest episodes for us to do in the future. I want to say thank you to my panelists, and thank you in particular to Patreon Steve for sponsoring this episode. This was so fun. It was a great pick, so thank you so much. And thank all of you for listening. Our top tier Patreon sponsorships are all snapped up, but you can still get tons of great perks by sponsoring us at patreon.com/Great Pop Culture Debate. So until next time, remember, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinions.